Episode 84, Interview with 3D print artist Justin Moses. Welcome to the Visionary Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So switch on your brain and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the podcast, listeners. I am Daniel Grove, your host, and I am super excited to have on the show with me a new friend of mine, Justin Moses.
Hey, how are y'all doing today?
I hope they're all doing good. Well, I'm super excited to have you on the show, Justin. Now, we met, I think, 2 years ago at Alamo City Comic Con, right?
Yes, sir. I remember you were taking photographs, and you had taken a picture of me, and I can't remember what costume I was in at that point.
It was a version of Han Solo, and it was from a Tim Burton movie.
It was the Jack Skellington Han Solo mashup.
Yes. Yeah. Is there an official name for that?
I don't even know if we ever did get a name for it. It was Han Skellington, I think we agreed on at one point.
Yeah, that's half the fun of a mashup cosplay is mashing their names together. Well, yeah, I met you at that Alamo City Comic Con, loved your costume, and photographed you, and I got to photograph your girlfriend recently, and that was a lot of fun too.
Marina, yes, sir.
Why don't you tell us, what is it that you do?
With my cosplay stuff, I'm actually part of a group, Star Wars Society San Antonio, and I focus, if you look at my stuff, heavily on Star Wars.
Awesome.
I've always loved the aspect of it. I mean, the armor, you'll always find me in a suit of armor. I'm the tin can walking around somewhere. We actually do a lot of events. We'll do charity events, all kinds of things, as well as just go to conventions and just enjoy what we do.
That's really cool.
Sometimes, I mean, my costumes are really hot. I have at least 5 layers on. So at the end, I'm completely drained, and I probably have lost
dehydrated
3 pounds due to water.
You really should bring a scale and weigh yourself before and after. That would be really interesting.
I actually did that once because the hotel we were staying at had a scale, and I had lost, I believe, 5 pounds.
Wow, that's crazy.
And
you got to drink some Gatorade water right after that. That's like dangerous.
I actually did. I realized I was like, I can't do that to myself again, and I started to carry a water bottle, Camelback, anything I could use.
Good. Yeah, build that into your cosplay. Yeah, Star Wars cosplaying is not friendly in the Texas weather. That's what I've learned. It's just
absolutely
most costumes are just really, really hot.
That day we did the photo shoot at the library, and I was standing out there. Even in the shade, ooh, I was sweating. Like, I could feel the sweat drip down my back and just building up in the suit.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I felt bad, but hey, what can you do?
It was actually quite entertaining because I was just like, okay, I can survive out here.
It was really hot and humid. That was in August, right? August 3rd, I think. It was
August 3rd, Texas. And it was like 98 degrees outside, or 100.
Man, yeah, like 2-3 p.m. Not the best time for a photo shoot, but with this convention, we didn't have any choice. It was a short, 4-hour con, so
unfortunately so.
Yeah. One thing that you're known for that I've noticed a lot with your cosplay is that you do a lot of 3D printing, which really, really intrigues me because any longtime listener knows, or if you follow my stuff online, I love 3D stuff. I make a lot of 3D models. I make, digital props. You make physical props. I make digital props, and I use them in Photoshop to, put them in the hands of my client or put a spaceship in the background. It's all digital and fake. But 3D printing is really cool because now we have the ability to bring, quote unquote fake or digital assets, digital objects and props and accessories into the real world with 3D printing. And literally anyone can do it in their house, which is just mind blowing. 10 years ago, we didn't have this. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this discussion about how 3D printing has changed the cosplay and the hobbyist world, because I think it's got some really big impacts, even on science and medical stuff. So we'll get to that later. But tell me, how did you get into 3D printing?
I actually started when I met one of my friends, Carlos, and he had a 3D printer, and I watched it, and I wasn't even aware that this was a thing that was affordable at that time. So when he printed something for me, I was like, okay, I need to look into this. If he owns one, that means that they're more affordable.
If Carlos has one, I could buy one too.
Exactly. And my first printer I actually got from a person I was working for, and it was a giant, noisy, you could hear it throughout the house.
Oh no.
And it was really huge, but it had a small build space, but it was something to start with. And
Yeah.
I can't count how many small prints I made and messed up until I actually finally got the one thing, and it was a Benchy. It's the one thing that when you get a 3D printer, they're told you're like you got to perfect the Benchy before you go from there, which is a little tugboat, and you look at it and you say that's not hard to do, and then once you try and print it, if you have 30 tugboats that are half finished or look like zombie creatures, you realize how hard it is to do this one tugboat.
How funny. I never knew about that. It's like a test object to calibrate stuff or what?
It's basically a calibration because you would print it without supports, which we can go over later. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you don't do it right, it's going to collapse in on itself, or it
Mm.
doesn't hold its shape. There's so many factors that go into it. Layers can't be right. If it's not leveled,
Oh yeah.
one side will be well made, the other side will be very loose and just
Oh,
come
interesting.
apart.
Like the whole 3D printer has to be perfectly level.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about that. Makes sense.
And so
Cool.
and that's what got me into it. And I was like, it was like a gateway drug. I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is amazing.
Yeah.
What else can I do with this?
I need this in my life. Yeah, 3D printing seems to be a ginormous hobby that's just taken off. Because, like I said earlier, it's relatively affordable. You can get one for what, around $500, right? Give or take.
$500 for a good starter level one. I mean, they go down to as
Okay.
cheap as 100. I mean, it's just
Yee.
it depends on how
Don't buy
much
that
you
one.
want to just how much you want to have to do to get it to work right.
And as the quality of the 3D printers increases, so does the resolution, like the sizing of the printing and the strength of it, or what?
Um, it depends actually. The resolution all depends on, I guess, the size of your nozzle, as well as a few
Mm-hmm.
other factors. And
Okay.
material wise is the same thing. Some can print with you can print with carbon fiber. There's
Wow, that's awesome.
from carbon fiber all the way to PLA. I like using PLA for quick prints, but if I need something to be
Yeah.
strong and structural and hold its shape, I'll use ABS. It all depends. And Texas is hot, so ABS is my best friend.
Interesting. We'll get into materials later, but first, how long have you been cosplaying for?
My first costume was actually a Old Republic Jedi Knight that I had Johnny make, and it was out of EVA foam that was kind of it was
Yeah.
well made, but it wasn't sized correctly to me. Unfortunately, I
Oh
did
no.
not know how to measure at that time.
Yeah. When was this? What year?
2014, I believe. It was all pieced together, like I said, the EVA foam and a military flight suit and a few other things. So it was the
That's awesome.
start of my, I guess, I need to do better. I want to do better.
You go down the rabbit hole of getting better and better in costumes.
Yes,
Well, I think that's where 3D printing really comes in. Is it's a lifesaver for a lot of really small things that there's just not a good substitute for. Even with EVA foam or the other materials, you can make stuff that looks good, but it doesn't either hold up, it can't hold weight, it doesn't have certain functions like joints or clips or things like that. But 3D printing is like the hero that saved the day for cosplayers because they can make all kinds of small things that really make the whole costume work together. Is that right?
absolutely. I mean, like you said, with hinges, joints, I
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people who printed chainmail, and I'm just amazed at it.
Wow,
I have
that's
not
amazing.
tried it, but it's on my list. I mean, in my 3D printing folder, I have over 400 files that I will eventually one day
Oh,
print. I tell myself.
have a gallery in your house for them all.
Exactly.
Then my next question was, what is the first thing that you printed? But I guess you already answered that. That was a little tugboat, or was it something else you tried to print?
It was the little tugboat, the Benchy.
Yeah. Are there any prints that you're working on right now?
Currently, actually, on my printer, I have, in the new Star Wars movie, there's a small little droid that's a mono wheel droid, and his name is Dio. And immediately when I saw it, I was like, I need to 3D print that. I need to find the files. Well,
Right now.
as well as 400 other people in this forum that I'm on. And
Oh,
we
nice.
all started cranking out, trying to figure out how to design it, how it works, how it operates. And almost
That's so
within a
cool.
month, we had complete files that were printable, and then it was the
Oh, wow.
let's put electronics in it.
Oh man. So this is taking 3D printing to the next level. You're not just making a cool toy or decoration that can sit there and look awesome, but it's functional. So it's got room and design inside to actually move with, motors and stuff that you would put in yourself, right?
Yes, basically inside this is a little small
Wow.
cradle that is a counterweight to keep it always facing up. And in that
Hmm.
cradle, you have all the spots that are pre-made for servos, control boards, batteries, everything you need to make this model function in remote control, which is insane in this time of
That's
day because I'm
awesome.
like, I don't have to go to the toy store to buy this. I can print one right here.
Yeah. And, when 3D printers came out, when they became more well known, I thought to myself, I wonder if toy companies feel like they might be taking a hit in maybe 10 years because, little Johnny could 3D print that file, only at the expense of the material, and he could have the latest toy. It won't be painted or finished unless, of course, 3D printers can add that to the tool set. But like toys could be made at home, and you won't have to go and buy them anymore. Is that a thing? Do people make miniatures and toys and things like that?
Absolutely. I have little trinkets that I've saved, which are like the old Kinder
Hmm.
eggs, and it's an egg that has a little toy inside. And as you mentioned,
Oh, cool.
coloring in, there's actually 3D printers that have up to 4 nozzles. I think there's some crazy ones
Oh,
with 6 where you have 6 different colored filaments that can color. As it
that's
prints,
cool.
it will start to be like, okay, well, this has to be red, so I need to put a red layer in here. And
Nice.
once you have it finished, you have your entire model in all the colors that you were wanting to have.
Right. But at the same time, I feel like model painting is kind of a side hobby that's like joined tracks with the 3D printing hobby. Because once you print something, you've got to add finish, you've got to add texture and paint. And that, like I said, that's been a long existing, hobby since like the 50s, since like model cars came out. And then like in the 70s, people got real into making, Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, and it hasn't stopped. So is the painting of the 3D model like a big thing too?
Absolutely. Sometimes you have to go in and, I guess, refine details, sand down little rough spots, smooth it out.
Yeah.
It all depends on what material you're working on.
Oh, interesting, because they all work differently.
Yeah. As well as
Cool.
painting, when you mentioned the Dungeons and Dragons, there's actually a entire group that has miniatures that you can print out. And
Yeah.
there's actually people out there that if you tell them your character, what it looks like, how he looks, he will go make your character, and then you can print out your tiny little character out.
Oh, custom. That is so cool.
So it's no longer a paper version of your character or a drawing. It's
Yeah.
a physical representation. So
Mm. And it's painted and it looks amazing, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, some of them are amazing. I'm jealous.
Yeah, right. That's so cool. If I were better at 3D modeling, that might be a fun kind of side thing to do. It's like model custom characters for people, and they can do whatever they want with a file with printing. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So, what are some things that you've printed that have helped your cosplay? Like, where has cosplay and 3D printing, intersected for you?
One of the big things that's helped is I wear helmets with a lot of my costumes, and
Hmm.
I can say they do not breathe. If you have no airflow in there, you're going to cook like an oven.
Ugh.
And I've actually, one I had to design was a fan mount for my helmet because I didn't want to physically screw into the helmet. I wanted to be able to glue
Hmm.
this fan mount in and then attach the fan that way. And
Cool.
that went from just a little prototype to being like, this is the best thing I've made.
That's amazing. That's a game changer right there.
And it
I was
was,
going to ask you earlier when you mentioned, cooking outside in your Star Wars costumes. I was going to ask you, are there like interior suit air conditioning systems? Like, is that a thing?
there is, but those they're expensive. You
Oh,
got to commit
oh,
to
of course they do.
buying it.
Maybe you can engineer something cheaper and print it home.
Absolutely. My newest back piece I printed actually is pretty awesome because it has on the back it's a clone trooper backplate. So it has 4 holes on the back.
Hmm.
I took out those, I filed them out, and I added in mesh. And I'm actually now working
Cool.
on making a battery pack holder so that I can take
Nice.
fans and pull air in or push air out to cool off my back because obviously that's the hottest spot of
Yes.
your body, so you want to try and get some of the air
Yeah.
moving around it.
So can you find like modular pieces online? Like say you can look up and find just a 4 AA battery pack 3D file. Like that is the battery holder. You can get that. And then you can find another piece that can mount it to something else. Is that kind of how it works? Or you find it all in one piece, all one kit?
You can find individual ones, but sometimes I
Hmm.
will actually cannibalize, like, okay, I like this part that this costume has, and I want to
Hmm.
make it work with this one. And I used Slicer for a little while, and I would chop it off and then come and
Okay.
paste them together and make it work as best as I could.
That's cool. What are some other accessories or, hacks that you've made with 3D printing that have helped your cosplays? Or maybe some that you've seen elsewhere?
Sanding tools. You can go out and you can buy those little individual sanding blocks, as well as files that you can get an angle, and
Hmm.
those can cost from $10 to $20, $30 a set. And I've actually been like, I don't need to do that. I have the files, and I printed out my sanding blocks, and
Whoa.
it kind of helps too because if there's a part with a weird angle that you just can't sand normally,
Uh,
I can go and I can just take that sanding block and warp it to match the exact angle of that part, and then I just print it out and I have my sanding block in the same exact angle that I need to sand out.
so the sanding block is just a shape that you wrap sandpaper around, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you can make custom shapes to fit your needs. That's awesome. I didn't think about making tools. Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, with the ISS, that's one of my favorite things that they did was they needed a wrench, a certain wrench. Can't remember which one it was, and they said, "Hey, we need this," and NASA's not going to send a rocket to the ISS station for a wrench, so they sent them a file. They 3D printed out that wrench just to do the job they needed
Nice.
to do.
Yeah, I saw a thing on a video about that where there was some kind of cap that they did have to fly it up. Like it was like a safety issue. So they on their next flight up to the ISS, they had to load this little plastic cap that fits in your palm of your hand. And instead they could have at the time they didn't have it up there, but now they can print it, in just 20 minutes. Like, wow. Yeah. It could save lives. Literally 3D printing could save billions of dollars. You don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, they needed a wrench. They had their wrench once
Hmm.
they got the file. I mean, it took a while to download,
That's amazing.
I'm sure, on their side, but
I wonder what the internet speeds are like around in orbit. Dial up?
it's a good question.
I don't know. Are there any things you've made with 3D printing that you're particularly proud
There is actually one I love showing them off. I love taking him to conventions with me, and it's a 3D printed pit droid.
of? Yes, I love that thing.
And
So cool.
his name is Baxter. He was designed by one of my favorite 3D artists as well, Sean Fields, and he has built. I mean, he's one of those people that's like, I'm gonna make that, and he has his pit droid. I had my eyes on for the longest time, and I finally jumped in and said, I need to build it. I need to make it.
Mhm.
And he actually has files for that one. And next, I'm going to be printing out is a battle droid. So it's going to
Ooh,
be Baxter and Roger,
nice.
and
Full size?
full size.
Oh man, that's so cool.
And so I mean, he does amazing work. I always envy all his stuff that he makes, and I'm like, I don't have this money. I don't have this much money to spend, but I still buy them anyways.
You'll find a way. How big can your printer print?
Mine is a CR10, so I can print. If I remember, it was 12 by 12 by 15,
Nice. 15 tall?
15 inches tall.
So sometimes do you have to piece things together?
I do. I mean, it's not too hard. It can get a little difficult, especially if you want to try and line it up right. You have to make sure you're holding it exactly where it needs to be as it glues.
Well, I was recently listening to the Side Hustle School podcast, which is actually a podcast that I was featured on. I think I'm on episode 119. But this is a really cool podcast because the guy talks about and features various creatives that have, an entrepreneurial pursuit, whether a small business or some interesting thing they turned into it, making money. And one of the episodes recently was about a guy who started Nico Enterprises. And this is a very well-known 3D print artist. He's got YouTube videos. He's got a website. He's got a Etsy. Like, you name it, you can buy his 3D files. And you mentioned getting files online, so that's kind of something I want to talk about next. But this guy started with 3D printing an Iron Man suit for his kid. And I think he was maybe like 8 or 9 years old. Like a small kid. He made a child-sized Iron Man suit for him. with his printing, and that's where it all started for him. And now he's got this huge, he's got people that work for him that design stuff, and I'm pretty sure he's making really big bucks because he got in on this game real early, and he's doing really high quality files that people want. One of the big things he does is armor, so he does helmets, he does like full body armor, stuff like that. And now tell us about these websites. Like, how does this business work where you're buying files? And what are some websites that you really like?
Some you have to buy, of course. And Etsy has quite a few. That's where I usually go. That's my go-to. But
Yeah.
other sites, it all depends. If you Google what you're looking for, somewhere out there is one of the files. Colts 3D is another one that I like. My Mini Factory and Nico Industries. I remember seeing his Iron Man armor. That was the one that kind of sparked my interest of maybe trying to build that until I realized how much it was going to be, I guess, filament wise and how long. And I was like, this was when I had my way smaller printer too. So I was like, oh, that's going to be a lot of pieces, and I would have to chop it up and then glue it together. There's tons of files out there, and like I said, if you're looking for one, somewhere out there, there's a file. I mean, I was looking for the most obscure helmet, which was a Lord of the Rings elven, and nobody had one. And I actually asked one of the guys, I said, hey, I have these pictures here. Would you make me my helmet? And I'll buy it from you.
Wow.
And he was just like, yeah,
nice.
Somewhere out there, if it's not there, you can't find it. Somebody is willing to work on it and make it.
Yeah, if you're willing to pay him, for sure.
Exactly.
Now, if you say, can you make this helmet for me for free? Like, no, don't. Don't expect a big response on that request.
No, they don't like that.
That's really cool. I actually wrote the guy that owns Nico Industries, and I was writing him just to kind of say hi, and I heard about you on the podcast, and I was on the same podcast earlier, and so we got to chatting, and I told him, I make 3D stuff too, kind of as a hobby. I use Blender, which is a really awesome open source freeware program that I make all my props in and make a lot of special effects and things like that. And I said, one of my wild ideas is I want to make modular lightsaber parts that can be swapped out and, mixed and matched, just like they do at the actual Galaxy's Edge park, where you can, you have like 8 different pieces and you can choose which ones you want to make your own custom lightsaber. I thought of it first, for the record. They stole my idea. No, but I've been wanting to, make like the grip, the top piece, the emitter, some different button assemblies you can swap in and out. And then like a bottom part, I don't know what the bottom is of the hilt, but that piece, the butt, I guess, and make like make like 40 different pieces that have different styles, like maybe alien looking pieces, or Old Republic or Jedi, whatever. And someone could purchase these, either 3D print them and they purchase that, or they just purchase the files and just make their own custom lightsaber. And he's like, that's actually an idea I want to do. I've been thinking about that. So. And he said, I'll write you when we get that rolling. I'll contact you. So I'm thinking, hey, that'd be an awesome connection. But we'll see if anything happens. But regardless, just for fun, I'm going to start working on that project soon because that'll be really fun. I love making lightsabers.
I really like the idea too. My first costume was a Jedi, and
nice.
I remember
Mine too.
I had the my lightsaber, and I kept looking at it. I was like, I want to do something different. I want to do something, make something different with this.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't have tools. I didn't really know that. Now, looking at my printer, I can sit there and say, "Oh, I want this, this emitter, this hand grip, this pommel, this activation switch."
There you go.
You just print them all out, and you have your lightsaber how you want it. And it's not. It would be endless possibilities.
Mm-hmm. And the thing with lightsabers in the Star Wars universe is that they are one of a kind. Like the Jedi makes it for themselves based on, kind of abstractly based on their style, their personality, whatever. It somehow reflects the Jedi, right? Or the Sith. And so that whole customization idea, it works with a lightsaber because that's what they're all about. So, but when you go to these cons and people buy all their lightsabers from, what are they, FX Sabers, and there's a bunch of companies that make really, really beautiful and great quality sabers. But, 10,000 other people bought that same lightsaber somewhere. And it's not you, it's not personal. But if you could 3D print them, or 3D print and then sell those, and then maybe even paint them, that would be cool.
Yeah, like you said, it makes yours unique to you and only you, because who in the world is going to choose the same combination as you?
So I actually did have one of my lightsabers 3D printed about a year or two ago, and it was by my friend Marco Bernal, who's a cosplayer like you and also a really talented 3D printer artist. And he makes all kinds of wild props, similar to you that complement his cosplays, and he does commissions for other people, stuff like that. So I sent him this file, and he printed it, and it was really cool. I actually I got real detailed, and I printed a separate button that I could paint separate and put in, and then I had him print these separate little wings, that kind of like spikes that go on the very top of the lightsaber that would attach into these slots that I added. So it actually all fit together. I was really nervous that they would be the wrong scale, but they did fit together. However, one of my children got my lightsaber and snapped it in half. So yeah, now I have two little baby lightsabers. And
Yeah.
not very pretty. So would you say that that's maybe because I didn't add enough structure on the inside, or maybe was it printed with cheap material? I don't know. What makes something breakable like that?
When you print out things, like you said, a lightsaber, a lot of people decide, there's different orientations you can print it. So one of the ways with the lightsaber to add, like you said, structural integrity, since it's a
Hmm.
long cylindrical device, I would print it instead of straight up and down. I would print
Hmm.
it sideways, on its
Okay.
side, which with your layers, instead of the layers being all the way up, each layer going all the way to the top,
Hmm.
you would have
Like a
long,
slinky.
like a slinky, you would have long layers, and
Mm.
it's going to have more support lengthwise than
Okay, that makes sense.
height-wise. If I'm not sure what the proper term is for that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, and I think I recall him mentioning that to me. I don't remember which way he printed it, but I bet if I looked, I could tell. Cool. Well, no, he had a Marco Bernal. It's probably my fault. I didn't make it thick enough or something.
And that's
um,
that's another factor is with you have when you do a 3D print, you have what's called walls. You can choose to do one layer, two layer, three layer walls, as well as infill, which is basically a different structure. I mean, there's all kinds. You have a honeycomb, you have zigzag, square.
oh yeah.
I like to use cubic division, which is basically kind of cubes stacked on their corners. And to me,
Hmm.
that's my favorite one because it looks cool and it's really strong. I've actually tried to
Yeah,
break.
it's based on triangles mostly. Is it mostly triangles inside?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That's why.
And I've tried breaking some of those prints, and I end up bending it before it actually breaks.
That's great. That stuff's strong, man. That's cool. I don't know if it was the printing method or maybe my kids are just crazy.
Possibly so.
Maybe that. So we mentioned materials a few times. Tell us about the materials that are used in 3D printing. What are they? What are their benefits? And what do they cost?
I kind of know 16 to 20 of them. And you have
Wow.
from basic PLA, which is just a simple plastic,
Okay.
and it's stiff. I mean, it's a good plastic, but it's brittle, and it has a very low melting temperature. So that's one of the ones you want to
Hmm.
use somewhere inside.
That's
You're
good.
not going to have to worry, leaving in a hot car. If you leave it in a hot car, it will melt. I've had it happen.
Oh, really?
And it's
It doesn't. So like 100-degree like Texas weather will melt it or warp it.
not 100 degree. It won't warp it or melt it, but if you left it in your car gets, I mean,
Yeah,
almost 200
it adds
degrees.
up.
So when you come out, it's going to be warped some way.
Oh no.
And then you have, once again, you kind of go up a little bit. Like PLA is just kind of that basic. A lot
Yeah.
of almost every printer will do PLA. ABS is another one,
Hmm.
the same thing. And it's extremely strong. It's very resistant to wear. So it's something you can use for like if your costume has buckles, something that's
Hmm.
going to get a lot of contact with
Moving
things
parts.
that are going to wear down the surface, as well as heat tolerance. It's very good in heat. So that's something if you know is going to be stuck in your car for a while, you can print it with that. Those are the two I started off with. As you go down, I mean, there's more and more. You get, PLA plus, which is,
Hmm.
like I said, a little bit better, all the way to you can print now in carbon fiber, which is really cool.
That's so cool.
I mean, some people will print out gun parts. I've seen.
Uh-oh. Whoa, hey.
That's one of the groups I've seen. I'm like, all right, they seem to like that. I've seen people print out helmets in the carbon fiber, and I'm really jealous because I have not gotten to that point in comfortability to print out a helmet in carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Even parts for vehicles. Some people have printed out I've seen someone who printed out an entire spoiler for his car in carbon fiber.
Oh Oh
And
man,
so
that's so cool.
he was bragging about it because he went from spending $700 on it. He 3D printed it and designed it for I think 300, which is still a huge saving
Nice.
difference.
And you could say, "Hey, I made this. No one else has this." If you modify it, you got bragging rights.
Exactly. And then there's also like a nylon one, which has the plastic, but it has carbon fiber strands in it.
Wow.
There's wood filament actually. That's one that is very interesting. It's super cool because you can print it out, you can sand it. It's like having a piece of wood in your hand and you sand it down and you can stain it. It has the same properties as wood, but
Whoa, that's cool.
you can get the crazy designs that you would not be able to do with a piece of wood.
That's amazing. I think I read about that. They said it has sawdust or wood dust in the PLA. Is that a mixture?
Yeah, it's like wood. It's I think it's sawdust mixed in with the plastic.
Awesome. But it's just enough fibrousness to take on finishes and staining and things like that.
Yes.
Wow, that's really cool.
There's a new one I've seen popping up, which is actually a ceramic and almost like a ceramic and a brick.
Man.
And when it comes out, it looks like a stone. It looks like stonework. You can't even tell. Like it looks like somebody just took a chisel and just chipped it out, and it was perfect.
Wow. That's great for so many fantasy and even miniatures and stuff like that.
A lot of people use that, and they'll make, like you said, the bust, the old, you know, statues you'd see, and it looks like something that you could, touch, and it would be stone, but it's not. And
Wow.
there is some printers that can do it. I'm not sure if they're still how much they cost. I have not looked into it, but they can print metal.
Yeah.
There's a metal filament.
Oh.
And that's pretty cool to me because it's like, wow, like I print this out.
It can make circuits, you think?
I think it could. It probably would be possible. With all these different filaments, you come down to wear and tear on your printer, like carbon fiber, the metal. Which one is the other one? The stone. They're very rough and coarse. So your 3D printer has a little steel nozzle that it extrudes this plastic through, and as you print with these materials, it actually eats away at that nozzle. So after a while, you need to replace it.
And I'm sure the upcharge is a lot because that's a replaceable part.
It all depends on, which ones you get.
That's really interesting.
Another filament that's really cool, like I was talking about earlier with the printers that have two different nozzles, when you print out a model, you use supports. And supports can either be fun or they're a pain to take off. Especially if they're in a small area and you got to kind of try and poke at it to break it free. And there's a filament out there that actually will print as a support structure. Instead of using the regular plastic you have, it's a water-soluble plastic.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
So once your print finishes, you just take it and you wash it off and rinse it, and that plastic melts away. And you have your printed piece minus your support.
That is so awesome. I love it. Genius.
And there's some printers out there that, they can do all kinds of things. One I was reading when we were, I was kind of researching a while back was it's a diamond infused 3D printer filament. I have no idea why they thought this was a thing. Why somebody would use it, but it has functionalized. I'm reading it right now. It's the PLA functionalized nano diamond particles, and
wow,
I was like, that's pretty cool. I'd want to try that. And then I read the price, which is for the smallest roll, which you could not really do much, would be $152. You got to commit and make sure that you are ready to use that filament.
Yeah, you better not screw up the file or the print.
Exactly.
So it seems to me that 3D printing has opened up the doors of creativity and functionality. Has it really been like a big game changer for people that do robotics and other kind of physical hobbies?
Actually, one of the big things I noticed, I used to do in high school, I was part of the robotics team. We had to do different challenges. And so everything we made for those, we had to hand make from metal, whatever we had at hand.
Oh, man. So much work.
So recently I was at my old school. I came across my teacher. I was like, hey, do y'all still do that? And, I was looking at the shop and I realized I was like, they have a 3D printer. And he's like, yeah, we actually now design our parts and 3D print out what we need. And that was my thought too, was like, that's cheating because way back in the day, I had to, we had to physically design our hinge or whatever piece we needed, cut it out, drill it out, and make it all work. That was a game changer to me. I was like, okay, this opened a whole new world because Now with
Mhm.
those competitions, they can do harder challenges.
So much more. They can make things stronger and more functional and customized.
Absolutely.
Like you don't even need a shop anymore to be a roboticist anymore if you can 3D print stuff. Well, that gets us into the next part of this episode. Is I wanted to kind of talk about a few different aspects of 3D printing. The first one was I want to talk about some interesting uses for 3D printing. I've found a number of really creative things that people have made, but some of them that stood out to me was one. Well, just the first one here is someone had made their own cast for their broken arm. So they used kind of a really cool honeycomb design that was, very strong, but also lightweight, and it could breathe, which is something that typical casts don't do. And this is they probably use some really strong PLA, or what was the next step from PLA?
ABS.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they use that. It's really strong, and they put that around their arm, and there you go. Probably saved a lot of money too, getting a cast made.
And I remember seeing that because it was a black cast, and like you said, it had the honeycomb effect.
Hmm.
And I told my friend, I was like, if I ever break my arm, don't take me to the doctor. I'll 3D print my own cast, and I'll make this work somehow.
So start working on that file now, just so you have it, for an emergency.
He cracked up and he was dying. He's like, you'd probably save a couple hundred. I was like, I will save a couple hundred because I refuse to pay the bills.
Yeah. I even saw an entire 3D printed car. Now, I don't think the engine was 3D printed, but the chassis, the wheels, like a lot of it was likely pure 3D printed. Did you see that online too?
I did. I was amazed by that. I kind of knew that they were a thing, and I'd seen people hint, but I'd never seen a full completed project.
I also saw, now this is off topic, but I also saw an entire Lego built car, and this actually was powered by Lego pieces. It used the pneumatic pistons, and it had like hundreds of these pneumatic pistons that all work together to provide just enough torque to pull this thing at like 2 miles an hour.
I saw that one. I was absolutely amazed by that. I was like, they actually did that.
Yeah, it had a transmission, and it was just everything. I'm like, wow, someone's got way too much time on their hand, too much money.
I mean, as expensive as Legos are, I am
Yeah,
immensely jealous they can afford that many.
I bet that car cost as much as a sports car with how much Lego was in it.
Probably so.
Some other things that I came across online were building structures made with 3D printing. Now, I'm not sure which methods was used in the example that I saw, but I did see a separate video where they had this really basically what you think of as a 3D printer, which is the printing head moves motorized, on an X, Y, and Z axis, right? But they had this really big scaled up version, and it printed cement blocks. So the printing head would just spew out cement in the uniform shape of a block somehow, and it could spit out like the blueprint, like the wall plan of a building structure, in I think just a few hours. And that's a pretty cool idea.
I had seen that one. It was and they built, it was kind of like an affordable housing is the way they were putting it.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was a 3D printer. And the one you said sounds different from what I saw because the one I saw was basically how a 3D printer works. It was laying down a thin layer of, concrete, concrete or something, and it just followed the pattern of the entire house and just built layer by
Yeah.
layer. And that
That's
amazed me
so cool.
because that's, you want a house somewhere, you just say, okay, we can print here, and that's a thing.
Yeah. Set up the frame and press go, and there you go.
Exactly. And
So,
it's endless possibilities at that point because it's no longer having someone make it. You just draw it out, design it, and then that little machine will go
yeah.
and put it all together.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might be useful for, Mars colonization. It's like you just have a device that can, extend its legs and set up over a little over the area that you want your house built, and it'll make your little colony building right there. Another use I saw online was for prosthetics. So you showed me something. I didn't have time to look into it, but it was some guy who made prosthetics for his kids, right?
He he actually prints bionic prosthetic legs or limbs for kids that cannot afford to get a
Wow.
normal looking one, I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, he finds out things they like. Like he printed out one of my favorites when I saw and first read about him. The kid was he loved Iron Man, and
Mhm.
he went and said, "I'm going to make this hand for him." And he took the measurements, he did everything he needed to, and made the kid an Iron Man hand. And actually,
Wow.
Robert Downey Jr. himself delivered this piece to the kid.
Oh, I did see that. Yes.
And from there on out, he's continued to do it. And it's no longer doing it to do it, it's giving the kids a sense of normal functionality, being like everybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah,
And
they can eat with a fork or whatever with that hand. It's
and
huge.
yeah, he does, he does whatever they like, he finds what they like and he designs it according to that. So that way it's something
I
they
love it.
really enjoy, and it's not just a plain Jane, it's a custom made for them, something
Yeah,
that
just for them.
they enjoy in life and it fits their personality.
Very cool. I saw a similar video where this young girl who was double amputee, I don't know what the story was, but she was missing from her elbows down. And I believe some guy made the prosthetic arms for her in Blender, which is the the program that I use. And he made them for her, and they were kind of cyberpunk style. And she got featured on some like red carpet event for Battle Angel Alita, and the actress who played Alita was there. So it was kind of like, the movie's very much about cybernetic replacement and robotic body parts. So that was kind of a cool little crossroads there.
That reminds me of one that I was reading an article. It was actually a post on Facebook, and the kid was trying to get into 3D printing, and I kind of questioned. I was like, hey, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to make? I'll try and recommend what I can best help you afford and use. And his
Mhm.
story, it kind of broke me a little bit, to be honest. He said his
Uh-oh.
dad had lost his arm. I don't remember how, but he wanted to print out a new arm for his dad so that his dad would feel normal. Because,
Oh,
and it, like I said, it broke me because he said his dad's been depressed. He's realized he's not like everybody else. He can't do things. He wanted his father to be
wow.
able to do that stuff. And that I remember watching that post on the Facebook group. Everybody, kind of chimed in, and if I remember correctly, he eventually, somebody bought him the printer, somebody bought
Yeah,
him, filament. They were helping him along the way, with filament, design wise, and he actually
that's
printed out
awesome.
the hand for his dad. And it was just amazing to see as a 3D printing community come together and make this happen for this person that just
Yeah,
kind of just
that's
showed up
really
out of
cool.
nowhere.
I love it how the 3D printing community is like it can be like a crossroads of three different things. First of all, it's creativity and artistry. The second branch is engineering, and the third is humanitarian stuff. Like we're helping people restore parts of their life, right, or functionality that they've lost. And I just think that that's really unique and really cool. You don't see that else. You don't see that really anywhere else.
Yeah, because it's something, like you said, it's humanitarian. It's something where I can sit here in my house, you can sit in your house, and I say, okay, this person needs this. Say they needed a part to fix, something like a generator, a pool handle, anything in general, and they live, out somewhere where it's not
Hmm.
accessible to just go out and buy a new one. You could physically say, okay, well, and they, for some reason they have a 3D
Yeah.
printer or there's somebody nearby. You say, hey, I need you to print this, and that person could print out that little handle. 3 hours later, they can
Yeah,
fix what they need
it
to
kind of
fix right
reminds
there.
me of the basic idea of the food replicator in Star Trek, is that they have instructions in their computer system for various food to be made, and it's just digital, like it's not physical. It's just a digital instruction. But when it goes through the machine, it becomes physical, and they have that object that didn't exist before. When that device recompiles or compiles the atoms into the right organization, voila! Now you have useful food that you can actually eat. It's kind of like this. It's like it's just a digital asset that's abstract and invisible. But once it's printed, it can be a game changer for a lot of people and really can serve a purpose.
Absolutely.
That brings us to the next portion of the podcast where I wanted to talk about a few examples of 3D printing in science fiction. Now, I'm sure I could have a list of like 20 or 30 examples, but I wanted to keep it simple for the sake of time. But I already mentioned the first one, which is the Star Trek food replicator. which is pretty magical when you see it on screen. It's just kind of like the thing just sort of like holograms into existence. Uh, that's just because of special effects when it first came out. That was the easiest way to make it happen. But the food 3D printing is a thing now. There's a thing called a chef jet, which can print. As far as I know, it can print sugar. I'm sure there's other materials it can print with, but the big one that they market it with is, oh look, you can make sugar candy in any geometric shape, or you can make beautiful abstract sculptures that look like this or look like that, or buildings or wedding cakes, and it's just 3D printed pure sugar. I think it's pretty cool as far as for artistic food.
Definitely. That I'm actually looking at right now, and I'm kind of like, I want one because I can print my own candy.
Imagine an amazing, just like wild out there wedding cake. You can just have like awesome stuff going on, and it's all totally edible.
And that's, yeah, like
Pretty
you
cool.
said, that's one of the things with wedding cakes is you can make any topper you want for any cake now, and it's no
Yeah.
longer a, hey, careful, there's a support stick in there you might bite into. It's just eat the whole thing.
Yeah, bite your head off.
As I look at this now, I remember reading an old article, probably in the beginning of the year somewhere, about MIT students that just got bored, and he decided to make
Uh-oh.
a 3D printer that made him toast every morning and drew whatever design he wanted in Nutella. And I was like, that's living life to the fullest, to be like, oh yeah, in the morning my toast is ready and it has a picture of
uh,
Iron Man on the front.
you have a meme on your toast.
Exactly.
So it's a Nutella printer.
Basically. And I was just like, that's awesome.
It's hilarious. I love it. When I was researching this, sci-fi and 3D printing, I was thinking to myself, what is the earliest example that we have of 3D printing? Like, who thought of it first, or at least who put it into words in a clear enough way that we say, like, we can see it as actually what 3D printing would be now? And I found a few examples. The biggest one that I found was from a short story called Things Pass By, and the author's name is Murray Leinster. And get this is from 1945. And it blew my mind when I read the description, when I read the excerpt from the actual book, and I wanted to read it to you real quick because it was just so intriguing. And I mean, this is 3D printing. So basically, in this story, there is a guy who makes a spaceship layer by layer. And let me just read this real quick. But this constructor is both efficient and flexible. I feed magnetotronic plastics, the stuff they make houses and ships out of nowadays, into this moving arm. It makes drawing in the air, following drawings it scans with photocells, which I guess is like a picture, digital picture. But plastics come out of the end of the drawing arm and hardens as it comes out. This thing will start at one end of a ship or a house and build it complete to the other end, following drawings only. Boom, 1945, 3D printing. Isn't that cool?
I mean, that's amazing that was just in a book. It was in, or not a book, a short story. And back then, that probably sounded wild to people. They thought, oh, that's not a thing. That would never be a thing.
That'll never happen.
And here I am sitting, talking to you on a podcast while my printer is doing exactly that.
Making something behind you. That's cool. And there's even an earlier example that's a little less clear, but it's from 1939. And it's from a novelette called The Four-Sided Triangle by William F. Temple. And it's a little more vague. It's not so exactly like there's a robotic arm drawing stuff, layer by layer. But there's an object that can make stuff. It can make anything. It can duplicate diamonds. It can duplicate art. And the story, which is really intriguing to me actually, is more about the social impacts of what happens if we can duplicate gold and diamonds in art. Like, is it even worth anything anymore? It's less about the sci-fi part, but more about the social impact. So cool idea. Just because a story is written in the 30s or 40s does not mean it's cheesy sci-fi. Like, there's some good stories out there. You just got to look and find them. Another example of 3D printing, this is the first one that actually popped into my head, was in Altered Carbon, which I finished the audiobook. We have an episode of the podcast where I reviewed that. And there's a TV show on Netflix, which is really good. There is some adult content in there, but it's a really well-made, pretty decent adaptation from novel to show. And I don't remember this in the show. I'm sure it's there, but in the book, there's a scene where he's kind of in a fix and he needs to get into a different body. So in this story, in this universe, everything that we are is in our memories, stored in a digital chip that goes in the back of your, the back of your neck, right below your skull, right? So when you take that chip out, that's you, that's your soul in there, and you can put it into any body, which is artificially made. They call them sleeves. So this guy is in a fix. He makes his own sleeve, I think, overnight in his basement, and it's illegal to do this. You're supposed to buy them, official. But yeah, he makes a new body for himself, 3D prints it, and pops his chip in there, and boom, he's in a new looking body. Pretty cool.
And yeah, that's what's amazing with that too. Is I mean that amazed me in that part was like to think one day we might be at that point where, oh, this
Mhm.
body's old. I can take out, like you said, it was a chip, but it was called the stack. Take out my stack. I have
Yes.
all my memories. I have everything I've ever done, and just plop it into a new body.
Hopefully your printer is calibrated right. You're gonna be in in some trouble.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I can think that can go wrong with that, but I have seen something of that sort. I'm not sure exactly how they work, but I know there is talks
Mhm.
of doing that. And
Yeah, I definitely see that as something that's worthwhile in investing in.
I don't know if I trust the parts yet because it's something they might have to experiment with, of course, humanely, but it is something that is very interesting to think about that
Mhm.
if you needed a new heart, being able to take your own stem cells and 3D print a new heart that is exactly like yours, minus
Yeah.
the defects if it has it, that your body will
Mhm.
accept immediately because it is your own body mass, I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, your blood type and DNA and everything like that will work and mesh.
Because that's one of the big
'Cause
things I see all the time with organ donors and people waiting for organs is it has to be exact types, exact matches, and even
yeah,
then it might not accept it.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. But if we can, okay, so another example of 3D printing in sci-fi that I found, and this is pretty obscure. I don't know if you've seen the movie Dark Man. It's
I
got
have
Liam
not.
Neeson in
I
it.
have to look into it.
Well, Liam Neeson's in it, so that's all you need to know. That justifies watching it right there.
But
But in Darkman, basically the character is a victim of this terrible lab accident, which I think was engineered by some bad guy or something trying to cover his tracks. But the lab explodes. The guy loses like his skin and gets these various health defects from these chemicals that were on him. Well, he has to 3D print skin to just go out in everyday life and live his life and do his thing to really secretly trying to get vengeance, right, or get justice. But yeah, he has to 3D print skin, and it only lasts for a certain amount of time. That's sort of one of the plot devices. It's just skin will only last like 3 hours or whatever it is. But 1990, that's pretty early for kind of bio 3D printing idea.
yeah, and at that time that was probably just a wild idea no one would think
Yeah.
is an actual thing. And if you think about it, I don't even know if skin grafts were a thing at that time because
Hmm.
now they basically do that. They take part of your skin and they actually grow it to be bigger and put
Wow.
it on. I was reading about I read a lot of medical stuff, and that was one that amazed me was that was the thing.
Don't they put like a balloon underneath it, stretch it out, let it like keep growing because
And
the
so
skin
it's
is
just
very
kind of wild to
elastic.
think that like you said, in the future, medical advances could be that crazy that you get in an accident, something happens, a machine's just going to rebuild that body part of some sort.
Pretty nasty thinking of like a organic filament, for like flesh or tissue or veins. It's pretty gross.
Agreed.
But who knows? Probably on its way. All right, so that's it for some sci-fi examples. Is there like a record for the biggest 3D printer? Like, is that a thing? Other than this, the house building ones.
I've never really looked into those, so that's something that I actually looked in today. And the biggest one I found could print, I think it was 3,600 square feet.
Whoa,
It was 30 meters by something by something. My jaw kind of dropped
that's
thinking I could print some cool stuff in that.
a car, a spaceship, maybe an X-wing. I don't
I would honestly try and print an X-wing in that.
know. Naturally, that's the first thing you should try to print.
Even then, just print out a life-size Millennium Falcon piece by piece.
Yeah, why not?
So the biggest one that has, I guess, a build volume that is not infinite would be the Wind Sun, which is 86,000 square feet. That's going to be 130 feet by 33 feet by 20 feet high. And
Whoa,
this is actually
I
a
gotta see
concrete
that.
printer that I'm looking at. There is some that are infinite actually, which is basically let me see here. I'm trying to see what it
It's got
prints.
wheels.
It
Yeah, what does
actually
it use it for?
here. This is actually a wild one because it has more than one axis. It's a robotic arm And actually, I remember reading about this one. They 3D printed out a bridge on it
Oh yeah,
out of metal, and it just kind of, as it went,
use its own
yeah, they just moved
its
it
own
back,
bridge.
and they printed out an entire 3D bridge because the one they wanted to be unique, and someone was just like, "Well, let's do this."
Now we've been talking about large scale printing and like props and things like that. Are there any advances in these like molecular world of printing super small? Do you think that would be doable in the next few years?
There is the new printers now that actually print. You can print very high detailed, and it's a resin printer, so it kind of is on the same, like you said, molecular, because it freezes
Mhm.
these small little things in place. And the
Wow.
detail I've seen them create on tiny parts that I didn't even think were possible on a 3D printer is feasible. I mean, you there might be days where we can, one day print out tiny gears for watches, and it's going to be just as strong
Mhm.
as a metal crafted piece.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, you have those nanobots that I've heard about, and those are, I don't know how they're made, but those could be
Mhm.
a possibility as well.
That is cool. Well, I think that the super small scale 3D printing will really be beneficial for quantum computing and things like that. Because if I understand quantum computers right, they actually are moving photons around, and you have to physically build gates and structures that will contain and control the photon flow, sort of like how wires control and move around electrons. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding the quantum computing physical designs rightly, but if that's the case, I mean, that would definitely be a go-to source if you can have an efficient way to make, small paths and small circuits and things like that with
Absolutely, like on the
3D
fly,
printing.
instead of having to physically design it, you say, "Hey, this is what I want," and it puts it together.
Yeah. hmm Yeah, very cool. Well, that's definitely getting into some future sci-fi stuff there. Although maybe not for long.
Hopefully not.
Well, I think that wraps up our interview. Justin, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the topics we talked about, I really enjoy talking about. So
hmm
it's
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on the show sometime soon to talk about more technology and sci-fi stuff.
yeah, absolutely. I'm always reading into future tech, popular science, popular mechanics,
I
whatever I can
love
get
it.
my hands on.
Well, I'm also hoping that we can have some collaboration in the future of me making some files and you printing them out. That'd be a
I
lot
would
of fun.
definitely enjoy that. Take on the challenges and
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time to join us on the podcast, and hopefully you'll be back on again soon.
awesome, definitely.
Thanks everyone for listening to this episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. You can comment on any of our social media posts, or you can send us a private email to tvvpodcast@gmail.com. If you are a 3D printer, we'd love to see some of the stuff that you've made, whether it's costumes or tools or weird stuff. I don't know. So let's see it. You can comment those pictures on any of our social media outlets such as Facebook or Instagram. Looking forward to seeing some awesome stuff that you guys out there have made. Well, thanks again for listening, and we'll be with you next week.
If you like this show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find our previous episodes there and listen whenever you want. We love to hear from our listeners, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, you can reach us at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.